Hey girl, and welcome back to the podcast. I am super excited to come on today and just chat with you a little bit. If you're watching the video, you can see these lovely balloons behind me because your girl turned 30 years old on 7/11. I thought in honor of my birthday, we would do an episode about aging. I feel like in society today, it is very much like everything's anti-aging and age defying. So we're gonna talk a little bit about aging. I have some notes here. We'll talk a little bit about aging as far as the cellular breakdown. We'll talk about some of the functional changes to the skin, some factors that affect aging, and then a little bit about UV exposure and premature aging and things like that. And then some of the services that you can have done to kind of just, help yourself look a little bit more youthful, because aging is a beautiful thing. Like, when you age, you're like fine wine, it gets better over time, but there are some things that you can be doing that's really accelerating that aging process, and like nobody wants that part. So let's age gracefully. Let's be preventative so that way we don't have to essentially backtrack when we're older and try to fix all of these things that we could have just prevented when we are this age right here, right now. Or if you are younger than me watching this, more power to you, honey. I love you. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking of Mean Girls now, and the mom's like, oh, God love you. That's just what I think. You have so much time on your side. You are youthful and even more radiant. And so that is really the time to just hone in on the professional skincare, hone in on the preventative care. So that way, when you're older, you just have to maintain that, honey. It'll be a lot easier. So let's get into some of the cellular changes that happen when you age. So when you are in your 20s, you're exposed to a lot of environmental damage, and you're constantly exposed to UV rays, which start to affect your DNA, your collagen, your elastin. It really does start to take a toll, especially if you're spending a lot of time outside. You can be exposed to free radicals. We can get free radicals from the sun, but also just from pollution and, just living daily life outside. It can be very stressful on the skin and on the cells. Free radicals are essentially a lone ranger that get into your skin. They're these molecules that get into your skin, and they are sad and lonely and are looking for a mate. And so it finds a mate, and then that pair that was originally together, that little guy is now by himself, and he's traveling along through the body looking for a mate. And so it's this constant cycle of damage that's happening on a cellular level because of this one lone ranger called the free radical. So in your 20s, your skin's integrity will start to be compromised a little bit, and then you'll also have a slower cellular turnover. So we know that babies, God bless them, they have the highest cell turnover. Their turnover is about 14 days, so 2 weeks. And when I say turnover, it's what it sounds like. The time that it takes the cells to come up from the basal layer of the skin, that's the deepest layer of the epidermis. So we've got the epidermis, which technically starts at the basal layer and goes upward, and then underneath the basal layer we have the dermis. So that's like the true skin. So down there in the basal layer is essentially where the keratinocytes will decide on what form that they're going to take, and they're going to then start to move upwards to the skin surface. So they start off as these like 3D cells, and as they're going through the different layers of the skin, they're actually flattening until they make their way to the outside of the skin that we can see, where they are flattened and completely dead and cornified or hard. So that process that starts at the basal layer and works upward towards the outer layer of the skin, that is the cellular turnover rate. So babies have the quickest, it's 14 days. And then teenagers, it's about 21 to 28 days. And then adults are like 28 to 42 days. And then adults ages 50 and older, it's about 42 to 84 days. Now, this plays such a big part when it comes to what your skin is looking like. Like if you are also a person of color and you are dealing with dark spots, this is going to be a super, super important thing to keep in mind, because if your cellular turnover rate is so slow, that is slowing down the opportunity for new, fresh skin cells that don't have any discoloration to make their way to the surface. So that's why it's super important that we are exfoliating on a regular basis, but also protecting our skin. Like when we're going outside, we're wearing sun hats. Y'all, I have one of my sun hats right here. So we have the black one here, and then we also have a tan one, and we do sell these on lumiskinandsoul.co. 80 to 90% of what we see as visible aging is just sun damage, which tells us that that can be prevented if we're wearing sun hats, if we're using UV protectant when you're doing your laundry, making sure you're wearing and reapplying your sunscreen, exfoliating on a regular basis, using professional skincare, being mindful of the times of day that you are out in the sun, and really trying to avoid being out there during the peak hours, that being like 10 to 4 p.m. That's essentially what happens in your 20s. Just a little recap. You're exposed to environmental damage, and the constant exposure to UV rays begin to take a toll on your skin, and free radicals start to affect the skin's integrity, and the cell renewal starts to decline. So now let's get to the fun part. Let's get to what happens in our lovely 30s. So in our 30s, our collagen and our elastin start to degrade. And one of the biggest reasons that it starts to degrade is because of sun exposure and sun damage, and those free radicals getting into the skin and starting to break down our collagen, our elastin, our DNA, our RNA. And when we don't have the proper structure of our, RNA, let's say, that affects how our cells are communicating to each other when it comes to healing. Our bodies have these instructions on how to heal when something's wrong, but if those instructions have been damaged because of free radicals, when it is time to heal, our bodies aren't going to know what to do. Maybe fresh skin cells are not coming to the surface and laying evenly how they should, or if you get hurt or something and your scars don't properly heal. Another really big thing that happens when our collagen and our elastin start to decline, we start to get fine lines and wrinkles. These are like the first fine lines and wrinkles. Now, of course, these ones are more static. I'm not talking about the ones that are dynamic, the ones that come from repeated facial movements and expressions, because side note, you can get Botox to relax those facial muscles, and that way it essentially just stops the muscle from contracting constantly, and it gives that muscle a break. So that way the lines can actually start to smooth out over time. Because think about it, if you are on a sled and you keep going down the same track, the same path, that track is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper until there's going to be no way for you to properly, smooth it over. But if you go down it a couple times and you're like, ooh, I got to pick a new path, that being, I'm going to get Botox or other neurotoxins to stop my muscles from, contracting and making that same facial expression. I just get fillers in my tear troughs, so right in this area. And then I do get Botox in my forehead lines, so here, and you can see I need to have it done again. I really try hard to have RBF because I don't want to be spending all my money on Botox. And then I also have it like in between here because I had the deepest, like you could start to see the lines even when my face wasn't making that repeated expression, because of just how often I was doing that. So now that I've been getting Botox on a regular basis here, because when I'm focused, I'm like, it's less noticeable. And that is my goal. And the saddest thing that happens in your 30s, as far as aging is concerned, is that your skin gets duller. Your complexion just doesn't look as radiant, and you have a less chance to have even skin. And so again, I just have to harp on this. It's so important to take care of your skin right now and to be preventative, because again, if your cellular turnover is not as quick, if your skin's not bouncing back as quick as it was when you're in your teenage years, and you're also not using professional grade skincare, you're not wearing a sun visor, you're not wearing sunscreen on a regular basis, you are going to get dark spots, especially if you are a person of color. You know, we know dark spots come from trauma to the skin, you know, that being from improper extractions, or, you know, if you fall down or something and scrape yourself, or from your hormones, or from excess heat, you know. And so the body doesn't know as far as heat is concerned. So when the body gets too hot in a certain area or something, or like let's say you're wearing a bra strap too tight and you realize like over time you are getting this dark line or something, it's because the body can't tell the difference, that it's just heat and it's just your bra strap. It's like, okay, it's heat, we need to protect the skin cells, and so it starts to overproduce this melanin so that way it can protect the cells. Same concept when you go out into the sun. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to protect the cells. And so down in the basal layer of the skin, it's like, hey, melanosomes, we need you to start making your way to the surface. And so these melanosomes, excuse me, are these little packages of pigment that essentially start to hand over their boxes of pigment to these dendrites. So the dendrites are essentially like the hands of the keratinocytes. So you've got this cell, and if you're watching the video, it's going to make a lot more sense. So you've got this cell, this is the keratinocyte. Imagine the keratinocyte has arms. The arms are the dendrites. The melanosomes are going to be in the hands of the dendrites, and it's going to just be handing over these packages of melanin to other keratinocytes, and those keratinocytes are making their way to the surface of the skin. And so that's how we get all this excess melanin on the surface of our skin. So let's talk about what happens in your skin when you're in your 40s as far as aging is concerned. So your skin becomes a lot thinner, and the oils that you have in your skin are actually on the decline. And so this can actually, again, make you look super dull. You could actually have an increased risk for like skin sensitivities. We need oils in our skin so that way we can have some sort of protection from the outside world and from the environment. Usually when our acid mantle is all out of whack, when our barrier function is not as strong and healthy as it should be, it can cause, again, sensitivities, breakouts, hyperpigmentation. So that brings me to what happens to your skin as you age in your 50s. So again, those lack of lipids or oils in your skin is going to lead to having a hard time retaining water in your skin. And if we have less water in our skin, it can look just, again, really dehydrated. It could look rough. It could feel rough. It could lead to skin sensitivities and really have those fine lines and wrinkles just look a lot more prominent. Now let's talk about some of the functional changes as far as aging is concerned. So in general, we experience a loss of collagen and elastin. We know elastin is what helps our skin bounce back. It's essentially these cross fibers. And we know collagen helps our skin stay nice and plump. So as we age, we also can experience our epidermis that starts to thin, and this can be an issue and really play into, having skin sensitivities or skin discolorations, or even the water loss that we would be experiencing because the epidermis is thinning and we're losing a lot of those barrier lipids. And this also goes hand in hand with the breakdown of our barrier function. And again, when we don't have a strong enough barrier, when it's not healthy, think of an impaired barrier like a chain link fence that has like a Cheeto bag in it, and like it, there's like dirt flying through it, and it's just like really gross and like not very aesthetic, kind of like unsettling. This is what an impaired barrier looks like, and that can really lead to sensitivities and breakouts and discoloration. Aging also poses an issue when it comes to water loss. Again, when we have less lipid barrier, we have less opportunity for our skin to hold on to water. So in those cases, super important that we're using more occlusive face oils, not every night, but definitely a couple nights a week. Once we seal in, we use like a rose water spray, or we use some other humectants in the skin, and then seal that in with an occlusive moisturizer or a more occlusive face oil. So as we age, we also have, again, an increased risk for discoloration, for brown spots, for rough texture. Again, this all plays into the fact that the barrier function is declining and that we are having a thinning of the epidermis. Once those things are happening, that's when all of these other, kind of symptoms and skin conditions start to appear more prominently. And again, we know we have less collagen, less moisture in the skin, more fine lines and wrinkles, more drooping of the skin, especially like in the jaw areas. And this really just has to do with the way that our fat pads lie in the skin, whether they are like superficial fat pads or like more deep fat pads. So now let's talk a bit about intrinsic and extrinsic factors when it comes to aging. So we know intrinsic, things that are happening on the inside that we typically can't control, but in some cases we can. And then extrinsic, things that are happening outside of our body. So some of the intrinsic factors being genetics, being your diet, your lifestyle. Some extrinsic factors being, where you live, the amount of pollution, the UV index. So one of the biggest intrinsic factors that I would say contributes so much to the way and the rate of skin aging is smoking. So we know that smoking really does take oxygen from your cells, and when your cells have less oxygen, they look dead, like they just don't look healthy and vibrant. And so if you want to speed up the aging process, go and smoke. Doesn't matter what it is, smoking will do it. Okay, so now we've gotten all of the depressing bits out of the way. You're like, okay, I get it. I need to take care of my skin, Erica. I don't want to age poorly. Like, what can I do? I got you. Okay, so the first thing that you can do if you want to age as gracefully as you possibly can is microneedling. And these are going to be in no particular order, but microneedling is going to essentially have triggered woundings to the skin, so that way it can cause these new fresh skin cells to make their way to the surface. It's essentially just kicking the skin cells in the butt and being like, hey, we need to produce, instead of waiting for your average cellular turnover. Because again, the higher you are in age, the slower your skin cells are going to turn over. It's great for helping reduce the appearance of scarring. So if you've ever had acne scars, boxcar scars, ice pick scars, it can really help to promote more collagen production in those areas to help smooth the skin. Microneedling is also really great for hyperpigmentation, again, because we got to get those new, fresh, unhyperpigmented cells to the surface and help to slough off the old, muddier looking ones. I'm also kind of a dying fan of chemical peels. After I started getting microneedling done, I was like, wow, this is just so much easier. The downtime is so much more minimal. You know, there's not a whole lot of pre-treatment that's involved, whereas chemical peels, especially if you're a person of color, you've got to pre-treat the skin at least 4 to 6 weeks. If you're my color, 6 weeks before you have a chemical peel. But honestly, the results that I've gotten from microneedling, I think they just far outweigh chemical peels. You know, sometimes you just have to be super careful with the peels, and you can't be in super hot weather, again, because your skin won't know what's going on and it can start to hyperpigment over the hyperpigmentation that you're trying to fix, which can be super frustrating. It can also hypopigment, meaning it can lose pigment in the skin, and then that is just a whole poop show. I'm going to show you some. I'm so embarrassed to show you guys these pictures. I was doing a skin treatment prior to doing a chemical peel, and so this is what happens. It just was bad. It was so bad. Thankfully, it went away. The hypopigmentation went away. But, you know, after that experience, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing chemical peels anymore. Like, I'm a microneedling girly. So laser treatments can also be really great for helping to resurface the skin. Now, if you are, again, a person of color, you have to be super careful. Now, I'm not going to speak too much on lasers because that is not something that is in my scope of practice, but you want to make sure that it is a YAG laser, because if it's not, you can actually cause really bad burns, because what the laser is doing, and this applies more so with hyperpigmentation if you're using lasers to improve that, it will see your whole arm, let's say, or my whole arm as the issue, and it will just start to burn up my whole arm because it can't differentiate between like pigment I actually want gone and like the pigment of my entire arm. And so you just have to be super careful about where you're going, what kind of laser that they're using, and it can't just be like a YAG setting. It has to be a purely YAG laser. If you want more information on that, I would look up Joelle, Joelle Lee. She actually used to be Michelle Obama's esthetician, and so that's how I found out about her. But she's super knowledgeable. I've taken her courses before. So yeah, if you are interested in laser, or if you are also an esthetician who can do laser in your state, then I would definitely look up her resources. Let's talk lastly about injectables before we move into the ingredients that you can use to just be preventative in your skincare routine. So Botox or other neurotoxins are going to be great for helping to reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles by, again, helping us stop to make those repeated facial expressions, whereas fillers are going to help fill in the areas of volume loss. So that's why it's super popular to get like your cheeks filled, or like your marionette lines, or even like for me, my tear troughs. Sometimes in that area, it can just look really sunken in. It can make you look super tired. So when you get those areas filled, it can just bring a more uniform volume to the skin. And then also one thing, so like as you're aging, you start losing a majority of your one thing. You lose 1% of collagen every year after you turn like 20 or 21, which is just absurd and so frustrating and sad. But it will start to happen like from like the center of your face and then kind of like move outwards. Botox and fillers are definitely investments. You know, with Botox or other neurotoxins, you do have to do them like 3 to 4 times a year. And then as far as fillers go, there are some fillers that last a year or two. Usually, you may have to do it minimum 4 to 6 months up to like 1 or 2 years, just depending on what kind of filler you get and what area you're getting it in. Also keep in mind, if you are more active, then the fillers and the toxin can wear off a lot quicker. Okay, last part of the episode. I'm super excited about this part because I just love ingredients and I just love, okay, so for a while I was formulating my own skincare products, and I will definitely get back into that. It is a large investment, if I'm just being real, but I do want to just talk about in general some of the ingredients or products that you can use to help with a variety of aging concerns. So the first one I'm going to talk about, just because we were talking about the loss of collagen per year, so that's going to be retinol. Now, the retinol is the GOAT. It is the gold standard in skincare. It's going to help new fresh skin cells make their way to the surface faster. It's going to help build up the epidermis. The right retinol will actually help to build more collagen into the skin. It has, and when I say right, I mean professional grade retinol. It's not going to be a retinol that you can get at Target or Sephora or anything like that. It needs to be a professional grade one. Retinols also help to just refine the look of the skin. So if you have like large pores, it just kind of smooths them out almost. It's just amazing for the regenerative, I can never say that word, it's so embarrassing, for the regenerative, there we go, the regenerative properties. So next, super important ingredients for the skin are going to be antioxidants. Now, I will do another separate episode about that, but the long story short is they help with protecting our skin from getting these free radical damages and these, again, the scavengers that get into our skin and start to break down our DNA, our collagen, our elastin, and all of the things. So using a professional grade vitamin C serum that has vitamin E, or other antioxidants, because there are actually stronger ones than vitamin C, going to be super, super, super important. Also, hyaluronic acid, we know that's in everything now. I feel like everyone knows about hyaluronic acid. It does hold up to 1,000 times its weight in water. So again, as you're aging, you're having less water in the skin. So a great way to get more water to be held in the skin would be to use hyaluronic acid. And then of course, lock that in with an occlusive moisturizer, something that's going to be a little bit thicker to keep that water trapped in your skin. Peptides and stem cells, the bee's knees at just helping maintain the integrity of the skin. We know stem cells are actually going to help heal the skin and help to produce more of its own cells. Niacinamide, we know, great for wound healing and blemishes. It's also a great anti-inflammatory ingredient for just overall skin health. We also know that AHAs, BHAs, enzymes, gonna help slough off those dead, dull skin cells. Even if you are a dry skin girly, you still have to exfoliate. I would use more of a lactic acid because it will help to hydrate the skin. And when we have, we don't have that buildup of dead skin cells, the products that we are applying after that can actually penetrate a little bit more easily. So that way it can, hydrate the skin properly instead of just sitting completely on the surface, because then at that point you're just wasting your money. Lastly, talking about the pigment lighteners. So hydroquinone, not my favorite. It causes a lot of free radical damage in the skin. We've already talked a lot about that. Licorice root, again, a great anti-inflammatory and also can help to lighten the skin or even the skin tone rather. And then kojic acid, we know that is antibacterial. So if you have acne, that will definitely help with that. And then we know it can also help to even the skin because it is a tyrosinase inhibitor. Other ingredients that can help to even the skin, mulberry root, Norwegian kelp extract, alpha-arbutin, which is like the good version of hydroquinone, And we know vitamin C also helps to lighten the skin as well. There's a lot that we covered in this episode. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below. Tag a friend who needs to see this video. And if you'd like to shop any of the products that I mentioned, check out our store at lumiskinandsoul.co. And until next time, remember, you are so beautiful no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what age you are. It is all good. It is all good in the neighborhood. Remember, God loves you. I love you. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.